Well, we can talk now to our journalist Nabila Ramdani, who specialises in the Middle East. Thanks for joining us, Nabila. Ben Brown there saying democracy in danger. We were speaking earlier to Professor Fawaz Gerges saying this is further polarising Egyptians, and he thinks every Friday after prayers this will get worse and worse. What's your take on today?
Well, this is a likely scenario. What effectively was unfolding today is a backlash against the military coup. The Muslim Brotherhood and effectively those who voted for Morsi, essentially a coalition of Islamists, feel that their democratic rights have been abrogated, and that they're calling for the democratically elected president, a former Muslim brother himself, to be reinstated. The response that they're getting from the military, effectively firing live rounds at demonstrators, is likely to trigger an escalation of the violence. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood is faced with two choices. Either they continue to call for peaceful demonstrations, as has been the case so far, or the question is, will they meet organised military violence with organised political violence?
We're seeing civil unrest. Does that suggest, from what you're saying, that we're not that far off possibly the start of a civil war?
Well, I think the implications are, of course, for Egypt, but also there will be consequences regionally. What we are seeing as well is the military is deeply concerned about foreign fighters effectively getting into the country to back the Muslim Brotherhood and help them regain their mandate. And the kind of scenario where you have religious insurgents battling against the military in Egypt is already playing out in certain parts of the country. This morning there have been reports in the Sinai and indeed the Suez area about jihadis attacking an airport, and it also led to the Rafah border with Gaza to being shut, in agreement between the Israeli and the Egyptian government.
And of course, Suez being a major trade route, that really does start to involve a much wider area.
Indeed, the Suez area and the Suez Canal in particular is an immense trade route. It's a link between the East and the West, and you can see not only the regional but the international ramifications.
It was interesting that Professor Fawaz Gerges was also saying that now here the military has once again become the sort of kingmaker, and that was a role that had been taken away from them through democracy, and yet here they are with it back again.
Yes, indeed, but I think nobody should be under any illusion that the army had somehow disappeared. It has effectively been running the country since 1952, when a military coup was organised by free officers, and ever since the army was always lurking in the background, pulling the strings. And what the Morsi presidency was trying to achieve was to neutralise their influence. It has effectively failed, but I don't think we are likely to see the army disappear overnight. They not only have a massive influence in the political affairs of the country, but they also have an immense stake in the economy.
Now, the live pictures we've got here, people running about, we've seen fireworks, there was a car on fire, I think that's the October the 6th bridge there by Tahrir Square, and again people running away, it looks like, or running towards something anyway. Obviously this is involving many thousands of people. The interesting thing you were mentioning to me before we came on air was also the issue of funding from America, because the White House hasn't said a great deal, has it?
No, and effectively the Obama administration not recognising that a military coup took place, in effect legitimises the coup, and it will have consequences, because how America doesn't want to be seen to be funding an army that's effectively shooting at peaceful demonstrators. So that will become an important issue for America, anybody who would want to fund the army in Egypt.
And where next, do you think? Where will things develop next?
Well, it's a hugely complicated issue. We can't. There's effectively a standoff happening. Both sides are sticking to the guns, and especially, sorry to be that literal, the army in this instance. But I think what this situation also reveals is that the army is failing its number one duty, which is to protect civilians, and it undermines their massive PR stunt in presenting themselves as the saviour of the people. So in that respect, this situation is unsustainable in the long term for the military.
And earlier we saw Jeremy Bowen being injured. There's a car on fire there, as we see on these live shots on the October the 6th bridge. These protests after Friday prayers will obviously go on for some time. Is it your hope that the army are able to maintain more law and order than it currently appears they are, even though it is being alleged that they open fire in some instances?
Well, absolutely. I think the army will have an important role to play here. It cannot be seen to continue to be responsible for the deaths of civilians. It has to be. It shouldn't play a political role in the internal affairs of Egypt, and it has to go back to its role as, you know, a guarantor of law and order.
All right, Nabila Ramdani, journalist specialising in the Middle East, thank you very much indeed for joining us. The headlines now on BBC News at 8:20. 6 people are killed in Egypt in protests against the military coup as the Muslim Brotherhood vows to stay on the streets until President Morsi is reinstated. A public inquiry finds there was no lawful